up your engine!
Well, for you Mustang guys, it's a sad day. Ford is ending production of the Mustang Shelby GT 350 and the GT 350R. The V8 engines, normally aspirated with standard transmissions. They're not going to be making them anymore. Now, on the plus side, they're going to be making the 760 horsepower supercharged Shelby GT 500, but it's only going to be available dual clutch automatic transmission that they have. They're not going to be making standard transmissions anymore, and let's face it, that's why people bought them. They wanted a standard transmission, and well, Ford doesn't seem to care about that. Now, the last GT 350 puts out 526 horsepower, a lot of horsepower, and it had a 6-speed manual transmission. Now you're only going to be able to get the GT 500s, which do have more horsepower, 760, but they have an automatic transmission. One of the reasons people buy these cars is because they have a standard transmission. They like toying around with them, right? They like doing burnouts and fooling around. I mean, that's why they like the idea of shifting and having fun with it. They don't want the computer to shift for them. Now, they can still have push-button shifting, but it's not the same as a gear shift you're moving around. I mean, this is a very limited production car anyway. You'd think they'd still make them in standards, but I guess to save money, Ford doesn't want to make a standard anymore, that they're going to switch dual-clutch automatic transmission. That has had some problems, so, you know, sad but true. No more Shelby with standard transmissions. Well, I say, Ford, you're making a mistake on this one. Here we go. Don't say Scotty didn't warn you. GM is now issuing a service bulletin because their V8 engines, some of them have faulty valve springs, including the new mid-engine Corvette. I always wonder about GM quality. Well, I'm still wondering. They got bad valve springs for a bunch of their V8 engines. It includes the new Corvette, Camaro, Silverados, even the Chevy Express van. This includes the L87, LT1, LT2, LT4, L82, L84, and the L8T engines. Wherever they're getting their valve springs from, they got a bad batch. Now, of course, they have to replace the broken valve spring. They would have to do a compression test of the engine, too. And if it's leaking, it's more than just a bad valve spring. It would mean that when that broke, it broke the valve or part of the head of the engine, and the engine would have to be rebuilt. GM and quality control, the two things today really don't even belong in the same sentence. If you own one of these, what you'll see is your service engine light might come on, have a misfire code, and you can hear engine noise, and you could get the trouble codes P0300, P0106, P0506. Those are the common things. But here we go again. When I made the video about the mid-engine Corvette, I liked it. It was fun to drive. But I did say, remember, this is a GM product. This is a new thing. And look, they're having problems. The hoods are popping open. But this is really horrendous. And it's not just those. It's all those other engines, too, that I'm telling you about. They got bad valve springs from somewhere and put them in a bunch of their V8 engines. So, bad quality control at GM. Big reason I say, maybe think twice before you buy a GM product. Well, I was curious what the best-selling vehicles of 2020 are in the United States, so here's the top 5. Maybe I'll even do 6, just to throw a bonus one in. Number 1 is, no surprise, the Ford F-Series. That makes Ford a lot of their profit. 90-something% of their profit. So it's no surprise it's the Ford F-Series. Now, number 2 is the Chevy Silverado. There's no accounting for people who don't know much about vehicles. Now, Ford sold 589,000 of their F-Series, where GM sold 414,000 of the Silverados. There's still people buying pickup trucks. I mean, people have businesses to do their work, and when the trucks fall apart, they generally will buy a new truck, so they don't have to worry about it breaking for a while. Especially with GM, you got to keep buying new ones. So Chevy Silverado was number 2. Now, number 3 was the Ram truck. Here we go. Trucks are what people are buying. Big trucks. So obviously, the guys who use trucks for work are still working. The virus hasn't really affected them. They're still working away. I'm still working away on cars. So that kind of makes sense too. Now, number 4 is the Toyota RAV4. Well, now we're getting into mid-size SUVs. They sold 302,000 of them. RAV4s can last a long time. That's not a shocker either. That didn't surprise me that was number 4. Now, number 5 is the Honda CR-V, which is basically the Honda version of the Toyota RAV4. So that's not a surprise either. They sold 237,000 of them. Very popular vehicle, very well-made vehicle. Doesn't surprise me that that's number 5. And like I said, let's go for a bonus. What do you think number 6 is? Number 6 is the Toyota Camry. They say that sedans are dead. Well, they're not really dead because Toyota Camry was the 6th most sold car in the United States in 2020 so far. They sold 204,000 of them. So don't think that the sedan is necessarily dead. There's still a lot of people that want a sedan, and what are they buying? Toyota 4-door Camrys, because they can last a really long time. So that's the top 6 sold in the United States so far in 2020. It sure says I want to buy a reliable used SUV or crossover, and I have a budget of $4,000. What should I get? Are you sure you have to have an SUV or a crossover? Because everybody wants them. The used prices are extremely high, and if you're only willing to spend up to $4,000, there's going to be a limited amount of excellent vehicles you're even going to be able to find in that price range. Now, you could always get a Ford Explorer or something. There's tons of them out there used. As they age, they're not the greatest vehicles in the world, but I've had customers buy them for $2-3 grand and have them for a few years, and they were okay vehicles. But if you want a really good one, you're talking about a Toyota or a Honda, you're going to pay a lot more than $4 grand unless you get really lucky or it's got, 350,000 miles on it. You're going for the most popular vehicle out there. You're only going to spend $4 grand. My advice, if you look at Toyota Camrys, Corollas, Honda Civics, Honda Accords, you're going to get an older one, but it could still last for years and years and years. Even if you are only going to spend $4 grand, you look really closely and try to find a good deal on one. Maybe get one that's got the paint's faded. It still runs as good, right? Or there's a fender that's bashed in and you can fix it later if you want it or just live with it. But you're looking at the most popular vehicles, SUVs and crossovers, and you only want to spend $4 grand. There's going to be a very limited amount that you can find because everybody knows they're popular and everybody sells them for more money. As far as I'm concerned, more money than they're actually worth. But that's how the world works. You could bypass it by getting a sedan, but if you got to get that, take the advice that I said. You can find an old Toyota or Honda, or if you want to mind gambling, you can get like a Ford Explorer. They're not going to last forever. Maybe you can find a lower mileage one that's older but lower mileage. They generally don't fall apart till you get over 100,000 miles on them. I mean, you find somebody who had one, old person or somebody, young person, join the army or something, and maybe find an old one that's got 60,000 miles or 50, and it still runs good even though it's old. It could be okay. Now, a lot of people have been putting down this RAV4 Prime, complaining about it, but if you want the facts of it, Toyota actually delivered more RAV4 Primes in its first 9 weeks of production than Tesla did with their Model 3, their Model X, or their Model S. All this hype about Tesla, realize Tesla's a very low-volume production company. Toyota makes a lot more cars, and they have a lot more acceptance from people too. And if you really think about it, if you want to mess around with an electric car, why not try something like RAV4 Prime? Because you go short distances, you can use pure electricity. Experiment with electric cars. Then you run out of electricity, there's no charging stations, it'll run on the regular engine and the hybrid and get phenomenal gas mileage. Maybe that's a better idea. If we do transition to electric cars, it isn't bam goes the gasoline or diesel motor and ooh, in pops magically electric motors only. There's going to be a transition phase, obviously. Having a part electric, part gas car, that only makes sense. Just those sales numbers themselves show that they're selling a lot more in their first 9 weeks of production than Tesla did with any of their cars. Some people might say, hey, that's great, I'll get a full electric car. I see this works fine. Some will say, no, I'm not going to get an electric car. It's fine for tooling around, but hey, I do a lot of long distance trips and I don't want to mess with that garbage. You don't have to worry about recharging the battery while you're on a trip. You can just run on gasoline. There's a lot of advantages to something like that if you're going to mess around with electric cars and try it out for the first time. Then you can't say, gee, the electric car was a big mistake. Realize if you sell an electric car, you buy a new one and sell it, the resale values are horrendous. They're absolutely horrendous. I had a customer who bought a Model S used. It had 15,000 miles on it. The original buyer paid 120 something grand. He paid 45 with only 15,000 miles, like 1/3, right? Sheesh, the guy lost 2/3 of what he paid for it. You don't like it? You're going to be screwed. You get a Prime, hey, it's still a regular car. Toyotas have great resale values. You don't like it? You can sell it to somebody else and try something else. You're not going to be able to do that with an electric car without losing a fortune. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.